Follow Emily Rowan's emotional journey as she escapes heartbreak and discovers unexpected love on a secluded farm. After being betrayed by her fiancé and losing everything, Emily finds herself on stranger Rhett Lawson's property, where healing, secrets, and new beginnings await. Before we begin this story, comment below where you're watching from. The afternoon sun beat down on Emily Rowan as she walked along the dusty road leading out of town. At 26, she never imagined her life would fall apart so completely. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and tears stained her face. She'd been walking for hours with no destination in mind. Just keep going, she told herself, pushing forward even as her feet ached in her worn sneakers. 6 months ago, she'd had it all: a good job at the local bank, a fiancé she thought loved her, and dreams of starting her own business someday. Now it was all gone. Her ex-fiancé, Brad, had left her with nothing but debt and broken promises. Her parents had sided with him, believing his lies, and last week, she'd lost her job when the bank downsized. Emily reached the edge of town and kept walking, finding herself on an old gravel road she'd never noticed before. An open gate swayed in the breeze, revealing a path to a wide, open field. Without thinking, she walked through. The field stretched out before her, golden grass swaying. In the wind, mountains loomed in the distance. For the first time in months, Emily felt like she could breathe, but then all at once the weight of everything crashed down on her. Her legs gave out, and she fell to her knees in the middle of the field. Emily cried like she never had before, deep gut-wrenching sobs that shook her entire body. She didn't care who heard her. She didn't know that she was on private property, and she certainly didn't know that someone was watching. Rhett Lawson had been riding his horse along the edge of his property when he spotted the woman. At 32, he was used to being alone on his 500 acres of farmland. People in town called him the recluse, or that cold-hearted Lawson boy, but he preferred it that way. After losing his fiancée Julie in a car crash the day before their wedding 5 years ago, he'd shut himself off from the world. He pulled the reins gently, stopping his horse. The woman was clearly in pain, and something about her desperation touched something in him that he thought had died years ago. "Whoa, easy," he said to his horse as he dismounted. He approached slowly, not wanting to scare her. Emily was so lost in her grief that she didn't hear him coming until he was only a few feet away. She looked up, startled, quickly wiping away her tears. "I'm sorry," she said, scrambling to her feet. "I didn't know this was private property. I'll go." Rhett stood still, his tall frame casting a shadow in the late afternoon light. His face was tanned from working outdoors, and his dark hair was slightly too long. But it was his eyes that caught Emily's attention, kind but filled with a sadness she recognized. "I don't know what brought you here," he said in a low, gentle voice, "but I can care for your heart if you let me." Emily froze. Something in his voice made her pause instead of running away. Maybe it was the genuine concern, so different from the fake sympathy she'd received lately. "I should go," she said, but made no move to leave. "Let me at least give you a ride back to town," Rhett offered, gesturing to his horse, "and it's a long walk." Emily hesitated, looking back the way she'd come. The thought of returning to her empty apartment, to the whispers and stares made her heart sink even further. "Actually, I don't really have anywhere to go right now," she admitted. Rhett studied her for a moment. "My farmhouse is just beyond those trees. I can offer you a meal and a place to rest." Any other time, Emily would have refused. Her mother had always warned her about strangers. But something about this man seemed safe, solid. "Why would you help me?" she asked. "Because someone once helped me when I was at my lowest," he answered simply. "I'm Rhett Lawson." Emily Rowan. He helped her onto his horse, then mounted behind her. They rode in silence through the field toward a cluster of trees. As they emerged on the other side, Emily saw a beautiful 2-story farmhouse with a wide porch. A large red barn stood nearby, and fields of crops stretched into the distance. "This is yours?" she asked, surprised. "My family's for generations," Rhett replied. "Now just mine." Inside the house, Emily was struck by how warm and inviting it felt, despite clearly being a bachelor's home. The furniture was sturdy and well used, but everything was clean and orderly. "Have a seat," Rhett said, gesturing to the kitchen table. "I'll make us something to eat." Emily watched as he moved around the kitchen with ease, pulling ingredients from the refrigerator. "You cook?" she asked. "When you live alone, you learn," he replied, cracking eggs into a bowl. "Or you eat a lot of cereal?" That made Emily smile. Just a small one, but the first real smile in weeks. They ate a simple meal of omelets and toast. Rhett didn't ask why she had been crying in his field, and Emily was grateful. She didn't want to talk about Brad or her parents or the job she'd lost. "I just need a few days," she said suddenly, "to figure things out. Then I'll be out of your hair." Rhett looked at her across the table. "You can stay as long as you need." Later that evening, he showed her to a guest room upstairs. It was simple, but comfortable, with a bed covered in a handmade quilt and windows that looked out over the fields. "Bathrooms down the hall," he said. "There should be clean towels. If you need anything else, my room's at the end of the hall." "Thank you," Emily said. "For everything." Rhett nodded. "Get some rest." As she settled into bed that night, Emily realized she felt safe for the first time in months. She still had no idea what she was going to do with her life, but for tonight, at least she could breathe. The next morning, Emily woke to the smell of coffee. She found a t-shirt and jeans folded outside her door, too big for her but clean. She changed out of yesterday's clothes and headed downstairs. Rhett was in the kitchen, sipping coffee and reading a farming magazine. "Good morning," he said. "Hope you slept okay." "Better than I have in weeks," Emily admitted. "Thank you for the clothes. They're my sister's. She visits sometimes." Emily poured herself a cup of coffee. "You have a sister?" "Sarah. She lives in Chicago with her husband." Rhett set down his magazine. "I need to tend to the horses. You're welcome to join me or stay here and rest." "I'd like to join you," Emily said quickly. The thought of being alone with her thoughts wasn't appealing. Out in the barn, Emily watched as Rhett moved confidently among the horses, feeding and checking each one. "Have you ever been around horses?" he asked. Emily shook her head. "City girl." "This is Bailey," Rhett said, stopping at a beautiful chestnut mare. "She's the gentlest one here." He showed Emily how to hold her hand flat with a carrot on it, and the horse gently took it from her palm. Emily laughed at the tickling sensation. "She likes you," Rhett said, and for a brief moment Emily saw a smile touch his lips. Days began to pass in a peaceful rhythm. Emily helped around the farm where she could, feeding chickens, helping in the vegetable garden, learning to cook. Simple meals. Rhett didn't ask questions about her past, and she didn't ask about his, though she'd heard whispers in town when Rhett drove her to pick up some clothes from her apartment. "That's Rhett Lawson," an older woman had whispered loudly, to her friend. The man who turned his back on love after his fiancée died. Emily ignored the gossip, just as she ignored the curious stares directed her way. She knew what they were thinking. What was Emily Rowan, the girl whose fiancé left her for another woman, doing with the town recluse? One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emily finally spoke about what had happened. "My fiancé Brad, she started, then took a deep breath. "He was using me, taking loans out in my name, maxing out credit cards. When I found out, he left, took up with someone else. My parents never liked me dating him, so when it all fell apart, they basically said, 'I told you so.' Then I lost my job at the bank. That day in your field, I just couldn't take it anymore." Rhett was quiet for a long time, then he said, "5 years ago, I was supposed to get married. Julie and I had been together since high school. The day before our wedding, she was in a car accident, didn't make it." Emily's heart ached for him. "I'm so sorry, Rhett. People say time heals," he said, looking out at the setting sun. "That's not exactly true. You just learn to carry it differently." They sat in comfortable silence after that, two broken hearts finding a moment of peace together. A week turned into 2, then 3. Emily started planting flowers along the fence line, bright marigolds and sunflowers that seemed to bring color back to the farm. And to Rhett, she noticed he was smiling more, talking more. One evening, when one of the chickens escaped and led them on a wild chase around the yard, Rhett actually laughed out loud. The sound surprised them both. "I can't remember the last time I laughed like that," he admitted. "It suits you," Emily said softly. Something was growing between them, tender and cautious, but undeniable. Neither of them mentioned it, both too, afraid of being hurt again. On a warm afternoon, Rhett taught Emily how to ride Bailey. His hands were gentle as he showed her how to hold the reins, his body close behind hers as they rode slowly around the paddock. "You're a natural," he said, and Emily felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the sunshine. That evening, as they prepared dinner together, their hands touched, reaching for the same spoon. Neither pulled away immediately. When Emily finally looked up, Rhett was watching her with an intensity that made her heart beat faster. "Emily," he said softly. The ringing of her phone broke the moment. Emily hadn't used it much since coming to the farm, keeping it charged but mostly ignored. She glanced at the screen and her face paled. "Brad," she whispered. Rhett's expression hardened. "You don't have to answer." But Emily knew she did. She had to face her past if she ever wanted to move forward. She answered the call, stepping onto the porch. "Emily, baby, I miss you." Brad's voice came through the phone, slick and persuasive as always. "We need to talk. There's some financial matters we need to straighten out." "There's nothing to talk about, Brad. You left me with debts I didn't even know about. That's what I need to discuss. Meet me tomorrow at the cafe in town, noon. I don't think... Emily, trust me, you want to hear what I have to say. It concerns your credit score, your future. Just meet me." After he hung up, Emily stood frozen on the porch. Rhett came out, concern etched on his face. "Everything okay?" "No," Emily admitted. "Brad wants to meet tomorrow. Says there are financial matters we need to discuss." Rhett's jaw tightened. "You don't owe him anything. I know, but I need to face him to finally close that chapter." Emily looked out at the farm that had become her sanctuary. "I can't hide here forever." "This isn't hiding," Rhett said, stepping closer. "And this doesn't have to be temporary." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "What are you saying, Rhett?" "I'm saying that these past weeks with you have woken something in me I thought was dead. I'm saying that I care about you, Emily, more than I thought I could care about anyone again." Tears filled Emily's eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. "I care about you too." That night, as Emily prepared for bed, she made a decision. She would meet Brad tomorrow, settle whatever needed to be settled, and come back to the farm. Come back to Rhett. For the first time in months, she felt hopeful about the future. What she didn't know was that Brad's call had set in motion events that would test this newfound hope. Because Brad wasn't just coming to talk about old debts. He was desperate, dangerous, and had nothing to lose. And he wasn't the only ghost from Emily's past about to resurface. Emily woke early the next morning, her mind racing with thoughts of her upcoming meeting with Brad. She'd spent months trying to rebuild her life after he'd left her drowning in debt, and now he wanted to talk. She wasn't sure if she was ready to face him, but she knew she had. So she found Rhett in the kitchen, already dressed for farm work, coffee mug in hand. He looked up when she entered and his eyes softened. "Morning," he said. "Did you sleep okay?" "Not really," Emily admitted, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "I kept thinking about meeting Brad today." Rhett set down his mug. "I don't trust him. Why don't I come with you?" "I need to handle this myself," Emily said, though the offer tempted her. "But thank you." Rhett nodded, respecting her decision even though concern was written across his face. "I'll drive you into town at least." The drive to town was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. As they pulled up to the small cafe on Main Street, Rhett turned to Emily. "Call me when you're done, I'll come get you." "I will," Emily promised. She hesitated, then leaned over and kissed his cheek. "Thank you for everything, Rhett." Inside the cafe, Emily spotted Brad immediately. He was as handsome as ever with his perfectly styled blonde hair and expensive clothes. But now she could see the coldness in his eyes that she'd missed before. "Emily," he said, standing to greet her with a hug she didn't return. "You look different." Emily sat down across from him. "What do you want, Brad?" Brad sighed dramatically. "Always straight to the point. That's what I liked about you." He leaned forward. "We have a problem. Those loans I took out in your name, the banks are coming after both of us. I need money." Emily stared at him in disbelief. "You left me with those debts. You took everything." "Not everything," Brad said with a smirk. "I didn't take that old necklace of your grandmother's, the one with the diamonds. I sold that to pay off some of your debts," Emily said coldly. Brad's smile faded. Well, that's unfortunate, because I need $15,000 by the end of the week. I don't have that kind of money, Emily said. You know that. Figure it out, Brad said, his voice hardening. Because if you don't, I'll have to tell the police about how you were involved in those fraudulent loan applications. Emily felt her blood run cold. That's a lie. I never signed anything. Your signature is on all the paperwork, Brad said smoothly. Who do you think they'll believe, the banker's son or the girl who got fired from the bank? Emily's hands shook as she gripped her cup of coffee. You can't do this. I already have. Brad stood up. End of the week, Emily. Figure it out. He walked out, leaving her sitting there stunned. Emily sat in the cafe for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. Brad was threatening her. She had no idea how to get that kind of money in a week. She couldn't go to her parents. They'd never believe her over Brad, whose family was well respected in town. When she finally called Rhett, her voice was shaky. Can you come get me? Rhett must have heard the distress in her voice because he was there in 10 minutes. One look at her face and he knew something was wrong. What happened? He asked as they got in his truck. Emily told him everything. How Brad had threatened to frame her for fraud if she didn't pay him $15,000. He can't do that, Rhett said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He can. And he will, Emily said, wiping away tears. His family owns half the town. No one would believe me over him. Rhett was quiet for a moment, then said, I believe you. Those 3 simple words meant more to Emily than he could know. Back at the farm, Emily paced in the living room while Rhett sat on the couch watching her. I should just leave town, she said. Start over somewhere else. Running won't solve anything, Rhett said gently, and you shouldn't have to run because of him. What choice do I have? I don't have that kind of money and I won't ask you for it. Rhett stood up and walked over to her, placing his hands on her shoulders. We'll figure this out together. I have some savings. No, Emily said firmly. I won't let you do that. This is my mess. Emily, Rhett said, his voice soft but serious. Since that day I found you crying in my field, nothing has been the same. You brought light back into this house, into my life. Let me help you. Emily looked up at him, seeing nothing but sincerity in his eyes. She'd been alone for so long, carrying her burdens by herself. Okay, she whispered. Rhett pulled her into a hug, and Emily let herself sink into his embrace, feeling safe despite the storm raging around her. The next day, Rhett drove into town to meet with his lawyer, an old friend of his father's. Emily stayed at the farm, tending to the animals and trying to keep her mind off Brad's threats. She was in the garden, planting more flowers along the fence, when she heard a car coming up the driveway. Thinking it was Rhett returning, she stood up with a smile. But it wasn't Rhett's truck, it was a sleek black car she didn't recognize. Brad stepped out, looking out of place in his expensive suit against the backdrop of the farm. Nice place your new boyfriend has, he said, walking toward her. Didn't take you long to move on. Emily crossed her arms. What are you doing here? I got to thinking after our chat yesterday, Brad said, looking around the property. Lawson's got money, old family farm, lots of land. I'm sure he can spare $15,000 to keep his girlfriend out of trouble. Leave Rhett out of this, Emily said, anger replacing her fear. This is between you and me. Brad laughed. Oh, Emily, you're still so naive. Everything is connected. He stepped closer. I want my money by Friday, or things will get very unpleasant for both of you. Get off my property. Emily and Brad both turned to see Rhett standing there, his expression dark and dangerous. Well, if it isn't the recluse himself, Brad said with a smirk. I was just telling Emily how generous you could be. I heard what you're trying to do, Rhett said, walking toward them. And it's not going to work. Brad's smirk faltered slightly. This doesn't concern you, Lawson. Emily concerns me, Rhett said simply. And I don't take kindly to people threatening her. Brad looked between them, then shrugged. Have it your way. But remember Friday. He got back in his car and drove off, leaving a cloud of dust behind him. Are you okay? Rhett asked, turning to Emily. I'm sorry he came here, she said. This is exactly what I didn't want to happen. Don't apologize for him, Rhett said. I talked to my lawyer. He thinks we have a case against Brad for fraud and extortion, but it would take time. More time than we have before Friday. Emily sank down onto a nearby bench. So what do we do? Rhett sat beside her. I have the money, Emily. Let me give it to him to buy us time while we fight this legally. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. Rhett took her hand. I lost someone I loved once because I couldn't save her. I won't. Stand by and watch you get hurt if I can prevent it. Emily looked at their joined hands, then up at Rhett's face. Is that what I am to you? Someone to save? No, Rhett said firmly. You're the woman who saved me. You made me laugh again, made me feel again. I was existing, not living, until you came along. Emily's heart swelled. Without thinking, she leaned forward and kissed him. It was gentle. At first, then deepened as Rhett pulled her closer. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. I've wanted to do that for weeks, Rhett admitted, his voice husky. Me too, Emily said, smiling. For a moment, they forgot about Brad and his threats, lost in the newfound joy of being together. But reality soon intruded. We should go to the police, Emily said, as they walked back to the house hand in hand. With what proof? Rhett asked. Brad's right about one thing. His family has influence in this town. We need solid evidence. The loan paperwork, Emily said suddenly. If we could get copies, maybe we could prove my signature was forged. Rhett looked thoughtful. That might work. But how do we get access to those documents? I still have friends. At the bank, Emily said. Maybe one of them could help us. The next day, Emily met with her former co-worker, Lisa, at a coffee shop out of town to avoid being seen. What you're asking is risky, Emily, Lisa said after hearing her request. I could lose my job. I know, and I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important, Emily said. Brad forged my signature on those loans. He's now threatening to frame me for fraud. If I don't pay him. Lisa's eyes widened. I always thought there was something off about him, the way he'd come into the bank and charm everyone. She lowered her voice. I'll see what I can do, no promises. 2 days later, Lisa called with news. She'd found the loan applications and had noticed something strange. All of them had been processed by the same loan officer, a man named Mark, who happened to be a close friend of Brad's. I can't get copies without raising suspicion, Lisa said. But I took photos with my phone. That evening, Emily and Rhett pored over the photos Lisa had sent. The signatures did look like Emily's, but there were small inconsistencies. We need an expert to confirm these are forgeries, Rhett said, and we need to find out if this Mark person was in on it with Brad. The day before Brad's deadline, they met with Rhett's lawyer again, showing him what they'd found. He agreed it, was suspicious, but cautioned them that it might not be enough to convince the police without Mark's testimony. And people like Mark don't usually talk, the lawyer said, not when it could incriminate them too. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She got up and went downstairs, finding Rhett also awake, sitting on the porch swing. Couldn't sleep either? She asked, joining him. Too much on my mind, he admitted, putting his arm around her. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, looking up at the stars. Whatever happens tomorrow, Emily said finally. I want you to know that these past few weeks have been the happiest I've had in a long time. Rhett turned to face her. It doesn't end tomorrow, Emily. We'll face this together, and then we'll have all the time in the world. The next morning, Rhett withdrew $15,000 from his savings account. They had decided to pay Brad off for now, to buy time while they built their case against him. They arranged to meet Brad at a public park in town. When they arrived, Brad was already there, looking smug. I see you've decided to be sensible, he said as they approached. Rhett held out an envelope. Here's your money. Now leave Emily alone. Brad reached for the envelope, but Rhett held it back. First, you sign this. He pulled out a document. It's a statement acknowledging that this payment settles all debts between you and Emily. Brad laughed. You think I'm stupid? I'm not signing anything. Then you don't get the money, Rhett said simply. Brad's eyes narrowed. Fine. He signed the paper without reading it, then snatched the envelope, counting the money quickly. Pleasure. Doing business with you, he said with a smirk. As he turned to go, a voice called out, Bradley Mitchum? 2 police officers approached, along with a man in a suit who showed a badge. FBI, we'd like to ask you some questions about certain loan applications. Brad's face went pale. What is this? The FBI agent looked at Emily and Rhett. Thank you for your cooperation. We've been investigating a series of fraudulent loans at several banks in the area. Your information was very helpful, Brad looked at Emily, fury in his eyes. "You set me up." "No, Brad," Emily said calmly. "You did this to yourself." As the officers led Brad away, Rhett explained to Emily, "My lawyer has a friend in the FBI. When we showed him what we found, he told us they'd been building a case against Brad and his friend Mark for months. They just needed someone to come forward." Relief washed over Emily. It wasn't over. There would be statements to give, possibly a trial to testify at. But Brad couldn't hurt her anymore. As they walked back to Rhett's truck, Emily said, "You know this means I don't have an excuse to stay at your farm anymore." Rhett stopped walking and turned to her. "Stay because you want to, not because you need to. Stay because—" He hesitated, then said softly, "Because I love you, Emily." Emily felt tears of happiness well up in her eyes. "I love you too." They kissed in the middle of the park, not caring who saw them. When they broke apart, Rhett said, "Let's go home." But as they drove back to the farm, neither of them noticed the older couple watching from across the street. Emily's parents, who had just arrived in town after hearing rumors about their daughter and the reclusive Rhett Lawson. And neither of them could have guessed that the truth Emily's father carried would change everything they thought they knew. The morning after, Brad's arrest was unusually quiet at Rhett's farm. Emily stood on the porch, coffee mug in hand, watching the sun rise over the fields. For the first time in months, she felt truly free. Brad couldn't hurt her anymore, and she was in love with a man who loved her back. Rhett came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Emily leaned back against him, just thinking how much has changed. A month ago I was at rock bottom. Now I've never been happier. Rhett kissed the top of her head. "Me too, I never thought I'd feel this way again after Julie." The mention of his late fiancée no longer brought the sharp pain it once had. Julie would always have a place in his heart, but now there was room for Emily too. "What do you want to do today?" Rhett asked. "Nothing," Emily said with a smile. "Absolutely nothing important. Let's just enjoy being together without any drama." They spent the day doing just that, feeding the animals, working in the garden, making a simple lunch together. In the afternoon, they took Bailey and another horse named Thunder for a ride. Around the property. "You've become quite the rider," Rhett commented as Emily confidently guided Bailey over a small stream. "I had a good teacher," she replied with a grin. When they returned to the stable, Rhett helped Emily down from her horse, his hands lingering on her waist. She looked up at him, and without a word, they were kissing, deeply, passionately. "I never want this to end," Emily whispered when they finally broke apart. "It doesn't have to," Rhett said, suddenly serious. "Stay, Emily, not just for now, but for good." Before she could answer, they heard the sound of a car coming up the driveway. "Are you expecting anyone?" Emily asked. Rhett shook his head. "No." They walked around the front of the house to see a familiar black SUV parked there. Emily's heart sank as her parents, Robert and Margaret Rowan, stepped out of the vehicle. "Mom? Dad? What are you doing here?" Emily asked, shocked to see them. Margaret Rowan, a slim woman in her 50s with the same blonde hair as Emily, looked at her daughter with a mixture of relief and concern. "Emily, we've been worried sick about you." Robert Rowan, tall and imposing with graying hair, eyed Rhett suspiciously. "We heard you were staying out here with him." The way he said him made it clear what he thought of Rhett. "This is Rhett." "Lawson," Emily said, moving closer to Rhett. "And yes, I've been staying here." "Well, you can come home now," her father said. "We know about Brad. The whole town's talking about his arrest." "I'm not coming home," Emily said firmly. "I'm staying here with Rhett." Her mother looked distressed. "Emily, be reasonable. You barely know this man." "I know everything I need to know," Emily replied. She took Rhett's hand. "I love him." Her father's face darkened. "Love? After what happened with Brad, you're jumping into another relationship? Have you learned nothing?" Emily felt Rhett stiffen beside her, but he remained silent, letting her handle her parents. "Rhett is nothing like Brad," Emily said, her voice steady, "and I'm not the same person I was then. I know what I want now." Her father shook his head. "We're not having this conversation in the driveway. May we come inside?" Rhett, ever the gentleman despite the tension, nodded. Of course. Inside the house, Emily's mother looked around with surprise, clearly expecting something less comfortable and homey. "Can I get you anything to drink?" Rhett offered. "We're fine," Robert said curtly before his wife could answer. "Emily, we came to bring you home. Your mother has been worried sick about you. I called Mom last week," Emily pointed out. "I told her I was fine." "A phone call isn't the same as seeing you," Margaret said. "And when we heard you were living with a man you just met, after what Brad did to you," her father continued, "we were concerned you might be making another mistake." Emily felt her temper rising. "Another mistake? Like the one you said I made when I didn't listen to you about Brad in the first place? When you said, 'I told you so,' instead of helping me?" Her father had the grace to look uncomfortable. "We may have been a bit harsh." "A bit?" Emily laughed without humor. "You turned your backs on me when I needed you most. Rhett was the one who was there for me." "We didn't know how bad things were," her mother said quietly. "You never told us about the loans, about the debt." "Would it have made a difference?" Emily asked. "You always took Brad's side. His family was so respectable, so well connected. That was before we knew what he really was," her father said. "Things are different now." "Yes, they are," Emily agreed. "I'm different, I'm stronger, and I found someone who respects me, who believes in me." She looked at Rhett, who had been standing quietly by the fireplace. He gave her an encouraging smile. Her father followed her gaze, his expression softening slightly. "Mr. Lawson, I don't know what my daughter has told you about our family. She's told me very little, actually," Rhett interrupted. "Emily doesn't speak ill of others even when they've hurt her. It's one of the things I love about her." Robert seemed taken aback by this. He studied Rhett more carefully. "You're Thomas Lawson's son, aren't you? I remember your father. Good man." Rhett nodded. "Yes, sir, he was." "I was sorry to hear about your fiancé," Margaret said unexpectedly. "That was a terrible tragedy." "Thank you," Rhett said, surprised by her kindness. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Finally, Robert sighed heavily. "Emily, there's something I need to tell you, something that might change how you feel about all of this." Emily tensed. "What is it?" Her father looked uneasy. "It's about Brad, and why we were so against your relationship with him from the beginning." "Robert," her mother said warningly, "is this really the time?" "She needs to know," he insisted, "especially now." Emily looked between her parents, confusion and dread building in her stomach. "Know what? What are you talking about?" Her father took a deep breath. "Brad's father, William Mitchum, and I were business partners years ago. Things didn't end well. He cheated me out of a lot of money, nearly bankrupted our family. That's why we moved to this town when you were 16 to start over." Emily stared at him in shock. "And you never told me this? When I started dating Brad?" "We tried to warn you away from him without telling you the whole story," her mother said. "We were trying to protect you. By keeping me in the dark?" Emily shook her head in disbelief. "If I had known, I might have been more careful with Brad. I might have seen the signs earlier." "Maybe," her father admitted, "but there's more." He looked even more uncomfortable now. "After Brad was arrested yesterday, William called me. He seems to think I had something to do with it, that it was some kind of revenge." "That's ridiculous," Emily said. "Brad got himself arrested because of his own actions. William doesn't see it that way. He made threats, Emily. Against you. Against us." Emily felt a cold chill run through her. "What kind of threats?" "He said he'd make sure Brad pins everything on you. That his son wouldn't go down alone." Rhett moved to Emily's side. "Brad can try, but the FBI has evidence of his fraud going back years. Emily's only connection to this is being a victim." "William has influence," Robert warned. "Money, connections." "So? Do I?" Rhett said firmly. "And unlike William Mitchum, I use mine honestly." Robert studied Rhett for a long moment, then nodded slightly, as if coming to a decision. "Emily says she loves you. Do you love my daughter, Mr. Lawson?" "Yes, sir, I do," Rhett answered without hesitation. "More than I thought possible." "And you'll protect her? From William, from whatever comes next?" "With everything I have," Rhett promised. Robert seemed satisfied with this answer. He turned back to Emily. "I'm sorry we weren't there for you when you needed us. We were wrong about a lot of things. Emily felt tears sting her eyes. This was as close to an apology as her proud father had ever come. I'm still staying here, she said, but her voice was gentler now. I figured as much, her father said with a small smile. You always were stubborn. Gets that from me, I'm afraid, he added to Rhett. Among other good qualities, I'm sure, Rhett replied diplomatically. The tension in the room had eased considerably. Margaret suggested they all have dinner together, and to Emily's surprise, Rhett readily agreed. As they prepared the meal together, Emily watched her mother and Rhett discuss recipes, her father offering to set the table. It was surreal, but in a good way. Thank you, she whispered to Rhett when they had a moment alone in the kitchen. For what? For being so gracious to my parents after everything I told you. Rhett touched her cheek gently. They're your family, Emily, and despite their mistakes, they obviously love you. During dinner, the conversation flowed more easily than Emily would have expected. Her father asked Rhett about the farm, genuinely interested in how he managed such a large property mostly on his own. It's been in my family for generations, Rhett explained. My grandfather taught my father, who taught me. There's a rhythm to it, a connection to the land that's hard to explain. I've always been a city man myself, Robert admitted, but I can see the appeal of this place. As they were finishing dessert, apple pie that Rhett had baked earlier, that day the phone rang. Rhett excused himself to answer it. When he returned, his expression was serious. That was my lawyer. There's been a development with the case against Brad. Emily felt her heart sink. What kind of development? William Mitchum has hired a high-powered defense team for Brad. They're claiming that you were a willing participant in the fraud that you've been setting Brad up for months. That's absurd, Margaret exclaimed. It gets worse, Rhett continued. They've filed a restraining order against Emily, claiming harassment. The sheriff is on his way here now to serve. The papers. Emily felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. A restraining order. Against me. When Brad was the one threatening me. Her father stood up, his face flushed with anger. This is William's doing. He's always been vindictive. What do we do? Emily asked, feeling panic rise within her. We fight, Rhett said simply. Together. Just then they heard the sound of a vehicle coming up the driveway. Through the window, they could see the sheriff's car, its lights flashing in the growing dusk. I'll handle this, Rhett said, heading for the door. Emily followed him, her parents right behind her. On the porch, they watched as Sheriff Jim Collins stepped out of his car, but he wasn't alone. Another man got out of the passenger side, a tall, distinguished-looking man with silver hair. Dad? Emily gasped, confused. Her father was right behind her. That's not me, Robert said, equally puzzled. The older man looked up at the porch, his eyes finding Emily. There was something familiar about him, something in the shape of his face, in his eyes. Emily, the sheriff called out. This man says he's your father, your biological father. Emily felt the world tilt beneath her feet. She reached for the porch railing to steady herself. What? No, that's impossible. Her mother made a small sound, almost like a whimper. Emily turned to look at her and saw guilt written all over her face. Mom, Emily whispered. What's going on? Margaret was pale, her hands trembling. Emily, I'm so sorry. We should have told you years ago. Robert put his arm around his wife. It's okay, Margaret. It's time. Emily felt Rhett's hand on her back, steadying her. What's happening? She asked, her voice small. Her mother took a deep breath. Robert isn't your biological father, Emily. I was married before briefly. It didn't work out. By the time I met Robert, I was already pregnant with you. Emily stared at her mother in shock. Why didn't you tell me? We meant to. When you were older, Robert said. But then years passed and it never seemed like the right time. Eventually it was easier to pretend. Who is he? Emily asked, looking at the man standing beside the sheriff. His name is Daniel Parker, her mother said. He left before you were born. I never thought I'd see him again. Emily turned back to look at the stranger, who was apparently her father. He was staring up at her with an expression she couldn't read. What does he want? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, her mother admitted. I haven't spoken to him in over 26 years. The sheriff called, up again. Emily, Mr. Parker says he needs to talk to you. Says it's important. Emily felt frozen, unable to move or speak. Rhett squeezed her hand gently. You don't have to do anything you don't want to, he said softly. Just say the word, and I'll send them away. Emily looked at Rhett, drawing strength from his steady presence. Then she looked at Robert, the man who had raised her, who she had always known as her father, and her mother, who looked terrified. Finally, she looked back at the stranger, claiming to be her biological father. Daniel Parker, a man she had never known existed until this moment. I'll talk to him, she said finally, but not alone. Rhett nodded. I'll be right beside you. They walked down the porch steps together, hand in hand, approaching the sheriff and Daniel Parker. Up close, Emily could see the resemblance more clearly. They had the same eyes, the same chin. It was unsettling. Hello, Emily, Daniel said, his voice deep and slightly rough. You look so much like your mother. Emily didn't know what to say to that. Why are you here? She asked instead. After all this time? Daniel glanced at the sheriff. Could we speak privately? Sheriff Collins nodded. I'll wait in the car. I still need to serve those papers, though. Papers? Daniel asked, confused. It's complicated, Emily said. And no, we can't speak privately. Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of Rhett. Daniel studied Rhett for a moment, then nodded. Fair enough. The truth is, Emily, I've been looking for you for years. Your mother, well, we didn't part on good terms. She made it clear she didn't want me in your life. That's not exactly how it happened, Margaret called from the porch where she and Robert were watching. Daniel ignored her. I made mistakes, Emily. Big ones. I was young and stupid and scared of being a father. By the time I realized what I'd thrown away, your mother had disappeared with you. It took me years to track you down. Why now? Emily asked. Why after 26 years? Daniel looked uncomfortable. I saw the news about Brad Mitchum's arrest. Your name was mentioned as a victim in his fraud scheme. I recognized your name immediately. So you just decided to show up out of the blue? Emily asked, skepticism clear in her voice. I know it's a shock, Daniel admitted, but there's something you need to know. Something about Brad's father, William. Emily tensed. What about him? William Mitchum is my half-brother, Daniel said, which makes Brad your cousin. Emily felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. What? Brad is your cousin, Daniel repeated, though I doubt he knows it. William and I haven't spoken in years. Emily turned to look at her mother. Did you know this? Margaret looked away, unable to meet her eyes. I knew Daniel had a half-brother. I didn't know it was William Mitchum until we moved to this town and I saw him. By then, it was too late to say anything. Too late? Emily echoed in disbelief. I was dating my own cousin and you said nothing? First cousins once removed, technically, Daniel corrected unhelpfully. But yes. Emily felt sick. This can't be happening. Rhett's arm went around her waist, supporting her. It's going to be okay, he said quietly. Is it? Emily asked, looking up at him. My entire life has been a lie. The man I thought was my father isn't. My ex-fiancé is my cousin, and now he's trying to frame me for his crimes. That's part of why I'm here, Daniel said. I want to help. William has always been vindictive, and if he knows you're my daughter, he'll be even worse. How exactly do you plan to help? Rhett asked, suspicious. I have information about William's business dealings that could be useful to the FBI, Daniel said. Things that could ensure Brad can't pin his crimes on Emily. Why? Would you do that? Emily asked. You don't even know me. Daniel's expression softened. You're my daughter, Emily. I've missed your entire life. I can't change that, but I can try to help you now. Emily didn't know what to think, what to feel. Everything was happening too fast. I need time, she said finally. To process all of this, Daniel nodded. I understand. I'm staying at the hotel in town. Here's my card with my number. He handed her a business card. Call me when you're ready to talk. As Daniel walked back to the sheriff's car, Sheriff Collins approached with an envelope in hand. Sorry about this, Emily, he said, looking genuinely apologetic. But I have to serve these papers. It's a temporary restraining order filed by Brad Mitchum. You're to stay at least 500 feet away from him at all times. Emily took the envelope numbly. Thanks, Jim. The sheriff looked uncomfortable. There's something else you should know. Brad made bail this afternoon. His father put up the money. He's out, Emily. Emily felt a chill run through her. He's out already. Rich folks have different rules, the sheriff said bitterly. Just be careful, okay? Brad seemed pretty angry when he left the station. As the sheriff's car drove away with Daniel Parker in the passenger seat, Emily stood in the driveway, feeling like her world had been turned upside down yet again. Emily, Rhett's voice brought her back to the present. Let's go inside. Back in the house, Emily faced her parents. How could you keep this from me? All these years? We thought we were protecting you, her mother said tearfully. Robert is your father in all the ways that matter. He raised you, loved you. I don't even know who I am anymore, Emily said, sinking onto the couch. Rhett sat beside her, taking her hand. You're still Emily, strong, kind, brave Emily. Nothing has changed about who you are. Everything has changed, Emily argued. My whole life is built on lies. Not everything, Rhett said firmly. What I feel for you is real. What you've built here with me is real. Emily looked into his eyes and saw nothing but truth and love. There, despite everything, that was the one constant she could count on. I love you, she whispered. I love you too, Rhett replied, and we'll get through this together. As the evening grew late, Emily's parents reluctantly agreed to return to their hotel in town, promising to come back in the morning. They had a lot more to talk about, years of secrets to unravel. After they left, Emily and Rhett sat on the porch swing looking up at the stars. Emily's head rested on Rhett's shoulder. What do you think Daniel really wants? She asked. I don't know, Rhett admitted, but we'll find out together. And what about Brad being out of jail? Should we be worried? Rhett's arm tightened around her. I won't let anything happen to you. They sat in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Emily spoke again, her voice small. What if it's all too much, Rhett? What if all this drama and family secrets are more than you bargained for? Rhett turned to look at her, taking her face in his hands. Emily Rowan, listen to me. I lost the woman I loved once. I spent 5 years hiding from life, from love. Then you stumbled onto my land and into my heart. Nothing, not Brad, not William, not long-lost fathers or family secrets. Nothing will make me let you go. Do you understand? Emily nodded, tears in her eyes. I understand. Good, Rhett said, then kissed her gently. Now let's go to bed. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. As they walked back into the house, arm in arm, neither of them noticed the car parked just beyond the gate at the edge of the property. Nor did they see Brad Mitchum watching the house with cold, calculating eyes. Brad started his car and drove away, a plan already forming in his mind. He would make Emily pay for ruining his life, and he knew exactly how to do it. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Emily woke with a start. She'd barely slept, her mind racing with everything that had happened the day before. Next. To her, Rhett was still asleep, his face peaceful in the soft morning light. She slipped out of bed quietly, not wanting to wake him. In the kitchen, Emily made coffee and stepped out onto the porch. The farm was quiet, just the occasional sound of animals stirring. This place had become her refuge, her home. And now, with Brad out of jail and a biological father appearing out of nowhere, everything felt uncertain again. The sound of tires on gravel made her look up. A police car was coming up the driveway. Emily's heart raced as Sheriff Collins stepped out. Morning, Emily, he said, removing his hat. Sorry to come by so early. Is everything okay? She asked, setting down her coffee mug. Not exactly. The sheriff looked uncomfortable. There was a fire at the bank last night, in the records room. Emily felt a chill despite the warm morning. A fire? Looks like arson, the sheriff confirmed. And the security cameras caught someone who looks an awful lot like Brad Mitchum entering the building before the alarm went off. The loan documents, Emily whispered. They were stored there. The sheriff nodded grimly. Most of the paper records were destroyed, including, I suspect, any evidence of those forged loan applications. The screen door opened behind Emily, and Rhett stepped out, buttoning his shirt. Sheriff, what's going on? Emily quickly explained about the fire. Rhett's face darkened with anger. This is Brad's doing, he said, destroying evidence. "We're looking for him now," Sheriff Collins said. "But I wanted to warn you both, Brad's escalating, and when people get desperate like this, they can be dangerous." After the sheriff left, promising to keep them updated, Emily sank into a chair on the porch. "What are we going to do?" she asked. "Without those documents, it's my word against Brad's," and with his father's influence, Rhett knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "We're not giving up. The FBI still has their own evidence against Brad, and now we have your biological father, who claims to have information on William Mitchum." "Daniel," Emily said the name tentatively. "I don't know if I can trust him. He shows up after 26 years and expects me to believe he wants to help." "We don't have to trust him," Rhett said, "but we can listen to what he has to say. Use whatever information he has if it helps us." Emily nodded slowly. "You're right, I'll call him." An hour later, they were meeting Daniel at a small diner on the outskirts of town, away from curious eyes. Emily's parents were there too, the tension between Margaret and Daniel palpable. "Thank you for meeting me," Daniel said as they all sat down in a booth. "I know this isn't easy for any of you. Just tell us what you know about William," Robert said, getting straight to the point. Daniel took a deep breath. "William and I share a father, but we had different mothers. He's 10 years older than me. We were never close, but I worked for his company briefly in my 20s. That's when I discovered he was involved in some questionable business practices." "What kind of practices?" Rhett asked. "Money laundering mainly," Daniel said, "and some tax evasion schemes. I kept records thinking I might need leverage against him someday. I never thought that day would come because of a daughter I never knew." "These records," Emily said. "Do you still have them?" Daniel nodded. "I do. And I've already spoken to the FBI agent in charge of Brad's case. They're very interested." "Why help now?" Margaret asked, speaking directly to Daniel for the first time. "After all these years?" Daniel looked at his ex-wife. "I made a lot of mistakes, Margaret. Walking away from you and our unborn child was the biggest. I can't change the past, but I can try to make things right now." "It's a little late for that," Margaret said bitterly. "I know," Daniel admitted, "but better late than never." Emily studied the man who was her biological father. There was sincerity in his eyes, but also something else, regret perhaps, or guilt. "What about Brad?" she asked. "Did you know he was dating me? That we were engaged?" Daniel shook his head firmly. "No. I only found out you were living in this town recently, and I had no idea about your connection to Brad until I saw the news about his arrest. The sheriff told us there was a fire at the bank last night," Rhett said. "They think Brad set it to destroy evidence." Daniel's expression turned grim. "That sounds like something William would put him up to. He's always protected Brad, covered up his mistakes." "Like father, like son," Robert muttered. "The FBI wants me to wear a wire," Daniel said suddenly. "To meet with William, get him to talk about what he and Brad have done." Emily's eyes widened. "Isn't that dangerous?" "Very," Daniel admitted. "But if it helps clear your name, it's worth the risk." Emily didn't know what to say. This man, who had been absent her entire life, was willing to put himself in danger for her. "William knows where I'm staying," Daniel continued. "He'll come to me eventually, if only to warn me to stay away from family business. When he does, I'll be ready." As they finished their meal, Daniel handed Emily a small envelope. "I've been carrying this with me for years," he said. "It's yours now." Emily opened the envelope to find a faded photograph of a much younger version of her mother, smiling and pregnant, with Daniel standing beside her, his hand on her belly. They looked happy. "We were happy once," Daniel said softly, as if reading her thoughts. "Before I ruined everything." Emily slipped the photo back into the envelope, her emotions too complicated to name. As they were leaving the diner, Emily's phone rang. It was Lisa from the bank. "Emily, thank God you answered," Lisa sounded panicked. "Brad's looking for you. He came to my house this morning, demanding to know where you were staying. He had a gun, Emily. I didn't tell him anything, but he was so angry. I've never seen him like that." Emily felt her blood run cold. "Did you call the police?" "Yes, but by the time they got here, he was gone." "Emily, be careful. He's not stable." Emily hung up and quickly told the others what Lisa had said. I need to get you somewhere safe," Rhett said immediately. "Somewhere Brad won't think to look." "You can come stay with us at the hotel," Robert offered. Emily shook her head. "That's the first place he'd look." "I have a cabin," Daniel spoke up. "About 2 hours from here, in the mountains. No one knows about it, except me." Rhett and Emily exchanged looks. "I don't know," Emily began. "You both go with him," Robert said, surprising everyone. "Margaret and I will stay in town, keep up appearances. If Brad comes looking, we can stall him, give you time." Emily looked at her father, the man who had raised her, with new appreciation. "Thank you," she said softly. An hour later, Emily and Rhett were following Daniel's car up a winding mountain road. They had stopped at the farm just long enough to pack a few essentials and make arrangements for the animals. Rhett's farmhand Miguel would look after everything while they were gone. "Do you think we can trust him?" Emily asked, looking at Daniel's car ahead of them. "I don't know," Rhett admitted, "but right now he's offering the safest option. And if he really does have information that can help clear your name, we need him." The cabin was small but comfortable, tucked away in a dense forest with a breathtaking view of the mountains. Inside it was simply furnished but had all the necessities. "It's not much," Daniel said, "but it's off the grid. No one will find you here." "It's perfect," Emily said, looking around. "Thank you." Daniel showed them around, then checked his phone. "I have a meeting with the FBI in an hour. I should get going." "You're leaving?" Emily asked, surprised. "I need to be in town for this." "To work," Daniel explained. "William needs to find me there, not hiding away. You two stay here. There's plenty of food, firewood. I'll be back as soon as I can." After Daniel left, Emily and Rhett stood on the cabin's small porch, looking out at the view. Despite everything, there was peace in this place. "Do you think it will work?" Emily asked. "Daniel's plan to get William on tape." "I hope so," Rhett said, "but even if it doesn't, we'll find another way. I promise you that, Emily." Inside the cabin, they found a well-stocked kitchen and made dinner together. The domesticity of the act was comforting, a reminder that amidst all the chaos, they still had each other. That night, as they lay in bed, Emily said, "When all this is over, what happens next?" Rhett propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her. "What do you want to happen?" "I want to be with you," Emily said simply, "on the farm. I want to help you build something beautiful there." "Then that's what we'll do," Rhett said, kissing her softly. They fell asleep in each other's arms, the mountain silence wrapping around them like a blanket. Morning brought a surprise: snow. Just a light dusting, but it transformed the forest into something magical. Emily made coffee while Rhett built a fire in the fireplace. "I could get used to this," Emily said, looking out at the snow-covered trees. "It's so peaceful here. We could build our own cabin someday," Rhett suggested. "On the far side of the farm by the lake, a place just for us." Emily smiled, loving the idea of planning a future together. For a few hours, they let themselves forget about Brad, about the threats hanging over them. They explored the area around the cabin, had a snowball fight, and made a simple lunch from the supplies Daniel had left. It was mid-afternoon when Rhett's phone rang. It was Sheriff Collins. "Rhett, where are you?" the sheriff asked, his voice urgent. "Is Emily with you?" "Yes, we're together," Rhett said, instantly alert. "What's happened?" "Brad showed up at your farm looking for Emily. When he couldn't find her, he went to her parents' hotel. They're both in the hospital, Rhett. Robert tried to stop Brad from going after Emily and things got physical." Emily, seeing Rhett's face, took the phone. "Jim, what happened to my parents?" "They're going to be okay, Emily," the sheriff assured. Your father has a concussion and your mother was treated for shock, but they're stable." "And Brad?" Emily asked, dreading the answer. "We still haven't found him. He fled before we got there." "But that's not all. Daniel Parker was supposed to meet with the FBI this morning. He never showed up." Emily felt a chill that had nothing to do with the snow outside. "What do you mean? We left him yesterday. He was heading to town." "No one has seen him since," Sheriff Collins said. "His hotel room looks like there was a struggle. We found blood." Emily sank into a chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her. "Oh God." Rhett took the phone back. "Sheriff, we're in a cabin in the mountains. Daniel brought us here yesterday. Said it would be safe. I need the address, the sheriff said. I'm sending officers to bring you in. We need to get you both into protective custody until we find Brad. After giving the sheriff directions to the cabin, Rhett hung up and turned to Emily, who was still sitting in shock. We need to pack, he said gently. The police will be here in a couple of hours. Emily nodded numbly. My parents, Daniel, this is all because of me. No, Rhett said firmly, kneeling in front of her. This is because of Brad and his father. Not you, never you. They packed quickly, both jumping at every sound from outside. The snow was falling more heavily now, the world outside the cabin windows turning white. The police might have trouble getting up here in this weather, Rhett said, looking out at the thickening snow. What do we do? Emily asked. We wait, Rhett said. The cabin is secure, we have food, heat, we'll be okay. As darkness fell, the snow showed no signs of letting up. Rhett kept the fire going while Emily made dinner, both trying to stay calm. Despite their growing worry, they were washing dishes when they heard it, the sound of a car engine in the distance. The police, Emily said with relief, but Rhett frowned, moving to the window. They shouldn't be here for at least another hour. Through the falling snow, they could make out headlights approaching. But as the vehicle got closer, Rhett's expression turned grim. That's not a police car, he said. It's a black SUV. Emily's heart raced. Brad, get your coat, Rhett said urgently. We need to leave, now. They grabbed their bags and slipped out the back door of the cabin just as the SUV pulled up in front. Through the trees, Emily could see a figure getting out. Not Brad, but William Mitchum, and he wasn't alone. This way, Rhett whispered, taking her hand. There's a path that leads deeper into the forest. We can lose them there. They moved, as quickly and quietly as possible through the snow, the darkness and falling snow making it difficult to see. Behind them they heard voices. Then the beam of flashlights cutting through the trees. They're following our tracks in the snow, Emily realized with horror. Keep moving, Rhett urged. There's an old hunting cabin about a mile from here. If we can reach it, we can hide. They pushed on, the cold seeping through their clothes, their breath coming in white puffs. Emily's legs ached from trudging through the deepening snow, but fear kept her moving. Behind them, the voices grew louder, closer. They were being hunted. There, Rhett pointed ahead to a small, dark shape among the trees. The cabin. They made it inside just as the flashlight beams appeared in the distance. The hunting cabin was little more than a shack. One room, no electricity, just an old wood stove and some basic furniture. But it had a door they could bar, and it was out of the snow. What now? Emily whispered, shivering. We wait for the police, Rhett said, trying to sound confident. They're on their way. But would they find them in time? The thought hung unspoken between them. Outside, they could hear William Mitchum shouting orders to whoever was with him. They were spreading out, searching. Rhett found an old hunting rifle mounted on the wall. He checked it, loaded. Stay back from the windows, he told Emily. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The snow kept falling, making the world outside a blank white canvas. Emily huddled near the stove, which Rhett had managed to light with some old matches and kindling. Suddenly, a voice called out, much closer than before. I know you're in there, Emily. Come out and talk. That's all I want. It was Brad. Emily froze. Rhett moved to the small window, peering out cautiously. He's alone, he whispered. At least I can only see him. What do we do? Emily asked. Rhett thought for a moment. Maybe I can distract him, lead him away from here. Give you a chance to get to Daniel's cabin and wait for the police. No, Emily said firmly. We stay together, and I'm tired of running from him. Before Rhett could stop her, Emily moved to the door. What do you want, Brad? She called out. Just to talk, Brad replied. Face to face, one last time. So you can finish what you started with my parents? Emily asked bitterly. That was an accident, Brad claimed. Your father attacked me. Like the fire at the bank was an accident? Or whatever. You did to Daniel. There was a pause. I don't know what you're talking about. The police know it was you, Brad, Emily continued. They're on their way here right now. It's over. Nothing's over until I say it is, Brad shouted, his voice changing, becoming angry. You ruined everything, my life, my future, all because you couldn't keep your mouth shut. You ruined your own life, Emily shot back, with your lies, your schemes, and now everyone knows what you really are. Through the window, they could see Brad pacing in the snow, agitated. Open the door, Emily, or I swear I'll break it down. Rhett moved to Emily's side, the rifle in his hands. We're not opening anything, he called out. Leave now, Brad, before you make things worse for yourself. Brad laughed, a chilling sound. The recluse speaks. Tell me, Rhett, did Emily tell you we're family? Cousins of a sort. Keeping it all in the family, isn't that what they say? I know everything, Rhett replied calmly. And it changes nothing. Emily belongs with me, not you. She belongs to no one but herself, a new voice called out. Emily and Rhett exchanged shocked looks. It was Daniel. Through the window, they saw him approaching through the trees, snow covering his coat and hair. But more surprisingly, Sheriff Collins was with him, along with 2 deputies. It's over, Brad, the sheriff called out. Drop your weapon and put your hands up. Brad stood frozen in the snow, looking from the cabin to the approaching officers. For a moment, it seemed like he might surrender. Then, with a cry of rage, he raised his gun and fired at the cabin. Emily screamed as a bullet shattered the window, sending glass flying. Rhett pulled her to the floor, covering her with his body. Outside, more shots were fired. Then silence. Emily? Rhett? It was the sheriff's voice. Are you okay in there? We're okay, Rhett called back, helping Emily to her feet. What happened? It's safe to come out now, was all the sheriff said. They emerged from the cabin to find Brad on the ground, being handcuffed by one of the deputies. He was alive, but bleeding from a shoulder wound. William Mitchum was also in custody, looking older and defeated. Daniel, Emily said, seeing him standing with the sheriff. We thought the sheriff said there was blood in your hotel room. There was, Daniel confirmed, showing a bandaged hand. William's men tried to take me. I fought back, managed to escape. Been hiding out working with the FBI, and it paid off, Sheriff Collins added. William Mitchum is facing multiple charges: conspiracy, obstruction of justice, attempted kidnapping, and Brad here is looking at additional charges of arson and assault. My parents? Emily asked anxiously. Doing fine, the sheriff assured her. They're waiting for news at the hospital. As the deputies led Brad and William to the police cars, Brad turned to look at Emily one last time. There was no remorse in his eyes, only cold hatred. It's really over, Emily whispered, watching them drive away. I can hardly believe it. Believe it, Rhett said, putting his arm around her. You're safe now, we both are. Daniel approached them hesitantly. I'm sorry I couldn't warn you. I had to make William believe I was out of the picture so he'd make a move. You risked your life, Emily said, still trying to process everything. For me. Why? Daniel smiled sadly. Because that's what fathers do. Even fathers who've made as many mistakes as I have. 2 weeks later, Emily stood on the porch of Rhett's farmhouse, their farmhouse now, watching the sunset. So much had changed in such a short time. Brad and William were in jail, denied bail while awaiting trial. The evidence Daniel had provided to the FBI had been damning, not just for the loan fraud, but for years of illegal business practices. No one in town doubted Emily's innocence anymore. Her parents, Robert and Margaret, had returned to their home in the next town over, but with a promise to visit regularly. Their relationship with Emily was healing, the lies of the past finally in the open. And then there was Daniel. He had rented a small house in town, making it clear he wanted to be part of Emily's life, but understood it would take time. They were taking small steps: coffee once a week, phone calls. It was strange getting to know her biological father. After all these years, but not unwelcome, the screen door opened behind her, and Rhett stepped out carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. Penny, for your thoughts, he asked, handing her a glass. Just thinking about how much has changed, Emily said. How much I've changed. For the better, Rhett said, wrapping an arm around her waist. Emily leaned into him. Remember what you said to me that first day, when you found me crying in your field, Rhett smiled. I said I didn't know what brought you here, but I could care for your heart if you let me. And you have, Emily said softly. Every day since. Rhett set down his glass and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. Emily Rowan, I have something to ask you. Emily's heart skipped a beat as Rhett got down on one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "I know it hasn't been that long," he said, looking up at her with love in his eyes. "And we've been through more drama in a few months than most people see in a lifetime. But I know, with absolute certainty, that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Inside the box was a simple, beautiful ring, a diamond surrounded by small sapphires that reminded Emily of Rhett's eyes. "Yes," she said without hesitation, tears of joy filling her eyes. "Yes, I'll marry you." As Rhett slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her, Emily knew that despite all the pain and lies and secrets, she had finally found where she belonged. Here, on this farm, with this man, where her heart had fallen, it had also found its home. The end.